Hey, I'm G, and welcome to the Stuff You Should Think About podcast. I answer everyday questions about phenomena and objects around you in quick, bite sized episodes. I go get the answers because you don't have time to, and I bring them back in a way you can listen to on your break, on your way to work, on your way home, while you're cooking dinner, or any little bit of free time you've got. Today's episode is going to be about evolution in isolation explained. And just real quick, full transparency, I'm no expert by any means. I haven't got a biology degree. I've never published a paper in a scientific journal. And I'm definitely not claiming to be Charles Darwin with a mic. What I am doing is digging into how certain natural systems work, not to push an agenda, but to help us understand the mechanics behind one of nature's most fascinating processes. So, if you ever wondered how a species can change so dramatically over time, especially when cut off from others like it, stick around. We're talking about evolution and isolation. Let's start with a place you might know. The Galapagos Islands. Now, you don't have to have seen a documentary narrated by David Attenborough to know that something special happened there. But here's the puzzle. Same species of finch from the mainland ends up on different islands. And a few generations later, they've got totally different breaks. Why? The short answer, isolation. But let's unpack how that works. Because it's less about sudden miracles and more about slow mechanistic shifts. Even in isolation, sometimes called allopatric speciation, follows a pretty clear pattern. First, a population gets split, maybe a river changing course. A volcanic eruption, a land bridge disappearing underwater, or in the case of islands, a storm blows a few birds off course and they end up on a new island far from home. Next, the true groups can no longer breed. Once separated, gene flow stops. That means one group might develop a slight mutation, say a longer beak. And because they're not mixing with the original population, that trait can stick. Another one is environment-shaped survival. On Island A, seeds are hard and thick, so birds with stronger, deeper beaks survive better. On Island B, insects hide in cracks. So birds with slender, pointed beaks get more food over generations. Natural selection rewards different traits in each place. Eventually, they're so different they can't interbreed, even if they met again. That's when science say a new species has formed. It's not fast. It can take thousands, even millions of years. But the process itself is remarkably consistent, and it's been observed not just in Darwin's finches, but in fish in isolated lakes, lizards on mountaintops, and even bacteria in lab dishes. Now, you might wonder, is this just theory? Well, The word theory in science doesn't mean guess. It means a well-substantiated explanation built from repeated testing. And evolution, including evolution in isolation, is supported by mountains of evidence. Fossil records showing transitional forms, DNA analysis revealing shared ancestry, and direct observation in species like the apple maggot fly, which evolved to live on domesticated apples separated from its hawthorn-feeding ancestors. And it's not just biology labs and textbooks. This principle appears in the legal world too, indirectly. Think about it. Our legal system, especially when it comes to freedoms like speech and thought, values open exchange. The First Amendment protects the free flow of ideas, almost like genetic diversity in a population. When ideas are isolated, when communities only talk to people who already agree with them, intellectual evolution slows down. You get stagnation, misinformation spreads, contradictory evidence gets ignored. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis once said, "Sunlight is said to be the best of the disinfectants." He was talking about government transparency, but the metaphor fits here too. In both biology and society, isolation limits adaptation. Interestingly, both sides of the political aisle at times recognize this. Conservatives may emphasize the danger of ideological echo chambers on college campuses. Progressives may critique algorithm-driven social media bubbles. It's a rare bipartisan agreement when systems, biological or social, are cut off from outside input. They become fragile. So, what can we do? If evolution teaches us anything, it's that diversity in genes, in environments, in ideas fuels resilience. And there are multiple ways to achieve that. In conservation, protecting corridors between habits helps species migrate and mix genes, preventing harmful inbreeding in isolated populations. In education, exposing students to dissenting views, not to indoctrinate, but to test ideas, builds intellectual flexibility. Online, adjusting your feed to include perspectives you disagree with, not to change your mind instantly, but to understand why others think differently, is like introducing a controlled gene flow into your worldview. None of this means every idea is equally valid. If a beak is too short to crack seeds, it doesn't matter how much you believe in it. Reality imposes limits, but the path to better adaptation, whether in nature or in society, starts with acknowledging that isolation shapes outcomes. Let me bring this home with a historical parallel. In the 1600s, Japan entered a period called Sakoku, national isolation. For over 200 years, foreign trade and contact were severely restricted. While that preserved certain cultural traditions, it also meant Japan missed out on the Industrial Revolution. When the country reopened in the 1850s, it had to rapidly modernize to keep up with the global powers. Similarly, island species that evolve in isolation often struggle when new competitors arrive. The dodo bird evolved without predators, couldn't adapt when humans and invasive species showed up. The lesson: isolation can lead to unique, specialized development, but it can also create vulnerability. Evolution isn't progress, it's adaptation. And adaptation requires input, pressure, and time. Now, a quick note on bias. I personally believe that understanding natural processes helps us make better human choices, not the other way around. I don't think evolution proves how society should be, but I do think it reveals how systems respond to separation, pressure, and change. And just like we study earthquakes to build safer cities, studying evolution in isolation can help us design societies that are more adaptable and less fragile. That's it for this episode of the Stuff You Should Think About podcast. A huge thank you for listening. If you found this helpful, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes. Download and leave a comment about your thoughts on this episode, or suggest a phenomenon or object you'd like discussed in a future one on whatever platform you listen to this podcast. Until next time, stay curious. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements are based on current scientific understanding, historical records, and public policy. While efforts are made to remain neutral, perspective may reflect available evidence and widely accepted precedents in science, law, and history.